Welcome, true believers, to the latest episode of True Believers here on the Fandom Podcast Network. It is time to come to the end of the road. There might be a Boys to Men song in there about that. I'm not sure, but we have reached the end of Agatha all along. We have been covering this show since its inception, and we are now down to the last two episodes. Follow me, my friend, to the glory at the end and Maiden Mother Crone. Now, we've got some interesting thoughts about these episodes. We're going to be diving into them pretty deep here, but I need you to expand out the coven because it is the final two episodes of Agatha. Kevin is still down under in Australia following that crazy upside down road. He's going into Stranger Things and all kinds of weird stuff, kangaroos, koalas, all that kind of stuff. So he's a little busy with that, but you know what? I have got a pretty good coven here to help me out with that, including the man who's been filling in while Kevin has been gone, the one and only Mr. Cat Cedar.
What's going on, brother? Good to see you again.
Yeah, I'm not feeling your enthusiasm, sir.
Yeah, let's just say I think I'm a little more enthusiastic about the trailers we're going to talk about than I am about what I watched.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting because, you know what, we apparently have a Witch of Darkness, but we also have a Witch of Light. And even though he might be getting ready to dance with some skeleton crews, we know he's also here to talk a little Agatha. Joining us from the Drunken Gungan, live, the one and only Derek Marsh.
Morning, gentlemen. It is good to make a appearance on True Believers. It's always fun diving into the multi IPs that we have out there. And yeah, I'm super excited to talk about Agatha all along and the last couple episodes with you guys.
Yeah, no, this is going to be a good time. But since we haven't had you on yet for Agatha, we'll dive into. Let's just dive in real quick. What your thoughts are going up to this point of these final two episodes. How have you enjoyed Agatha, Derek?
It's been great. So my wife Christina likes a bit of the Marvel MCU. She's not obviously as enthusiastic as we are, but she pretty much is mostly the one that accompanies me with the movie premieres, right? When we go out and see those. From the series perspective, she hasn't been too much into it. She did really enjoy WandaVision, though. So when I told her that, Agatha was getting her own show, she loves Salem. She loves the witch trials, right? She loves doing all that kind of stuff. She loves murder documentaries, all that stuff on Netflix, right? So she likes these kind of things. And so we've actually been watching this together, which has been really good, and we've enjoyed it. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are prior to that last two episodes, but episode 7 was phenomenal. It was probably my favorite, with Patty's character kind of coming full circle and all that with that portion of it. But I've really enjoyed it. I felt it's really been a solid series. You could definitely see where the writer and kind of visionary from, I can't remember her name, who did WandaVision, right, is directing this as well, or helping produce this side. So you can definitely see the ties to the kind of even callbacks to movies and other TV shows of more modern time versus kind of like how they were having the movie eras, from WandaVision. So this has been great. We've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I've talked about during the run of Agatha so far is how well it's stayed connected to WandaVision and certain aspects of the MCU and done a really good job with that. But before we get too farther in, spoiler alert. That is right. We are deep diving into episodes 8 and 9 of Agatha all along. So if you have not watched them yet, go watch them and then come back and join us here on the Fandom Podcast Network, whether it's on the audio podcast version or on our YouTube channel. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, please remember to give us a like, subscribe, and share it out. But yeah, spoilers are coming and we're going to get into them deep. But we have a few other things too that we need to do before we get into Agatha, because it's time for It's time for Snit, Thwip, and Kapow. Let's get to some MCU news. And boy, do we have some, because Disney dropped a very good look-ahead trailer. First, it hit the internet, and then it was aired before episode 8 of Agatha all along. And they've got some big stuff planned for at least Disney Plus. And guys, I was going down the list and doing some research on this. So things we saw in this trailer, we saw season 3 of What If, which will be premiering December 22nd on 2024, and I believe the whole season is going to drop at once, much like it did, I believe, last year for season 2 of What If. Then in January, we have Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, another animated series. The thing I'm most excited about, Daredevil Born Again on March 14th, 2025. June 24th, Ironheart finally drops. Then in the animated side, Eyes of Wakanda drops August 6th, followed by Marvel's Zombies in October of 2025. And then finally wrapping things up, a show that I have some curiosities about, and I know it gave some Iron Man 3 love, which I know always makes Kevin Wright so happy because, yes, Trevor is back, and he is going to be part of the Wonder Man series dropping in December of 2025. So, Derek, you're our guest. I'm going to give you first crack. What on this list grabbed your attention?
I mean, all of them did, right? It's kind of interesting to see that they are pushing a larger chunk of MCU essentially animation, right? I mean, obviously, for the longest time, Disney's had Marvel related content on the Disney Channel, but the fact that this is going to be heavily pushed on Disney Plus, exclusive type deal content. We've been waiting for the zombies for a while. That's been, I think, even announced 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was after that first season of What If.
So we've been waiting on that. We knew we were getting season 3, so super cool to get that. I'm not too thrilled or even excited about this Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. I don't think it's going to be much different than any of the Spider-Man shows that have been on Disney, channel itself or Disney Junior all these years, right? Like I've never really watched most of that stuff. Like I hear good reviews like X-Men 97. Like obviously I watched X-Men 97 because I watched X-Men, back on Fox back in the day and was anticipating for that. But this one I'm just kind of like, you know what I mean? So really the live action series shows is really probably where I'll put most of my attention to. Obviously I'm super excited to see Cox back as Daredevil in this full series, right? We obviously got, Punishers coming back in this. We've got Kingpin. So again, it's going to continue off where we're at from the Netflix drama series. Obviously we've had some tie-ins from Hawkeye and we've had some tie-ins from She-Hulk, which we might get some cameos. That'd be cool. But overall, super excited for that one. Ironheart, I feel my overall feelings about that is that I'm okay with it. I felt it was too convoluted in the Wakanda Forever movie. I felt like, again, it was supposed to be a series. They changed it to a movie, and I wasn't impressed because they just tried to cram too much in a 2-hour movie. So we'll see if they actually have some good writing for her in the series, and we'll see how it goes. But again, I can live with or without it. But I am assuming they'll continue to push the Young Avengers or the West Coast Avengers, whatever they decide to do with that. But I'm with you, Kyle. Wonder Man. I'm super excited about Trevor coming back. Ben Kingsley is phenomenal as that character. I loved him right in Iron Man 3. I love the character concept when they brought him back for Shang-Chi. So I'm super excited for this. It's an interesting concept of how they're going to approach it. But yeah, I think that's probably the most interesting, but most excited for Daredevil Reborn.
Kat, we talked a little bit about Daredevil last week when that trailer dropped from New York City Comic Con. So I know you're really excited about Daredevil. Is there anything else on here that's grabbing your attention?
I'm a big Simon Williams Wonder Man fan, so I'm excited for that. Can't wait to see everything going on there. Like we were talking a little bit before, it's like, how are they going to make him? Are they doing the millionaire start off? Or looks like he's already an out of work actor. What are they doing with this guy? Can't wait. Absolutely. Love both the animations. Ironheart, hit or miss for me. I mean, wasn't a huge fan of her in the movie, but we'll see what happens when it comes out. She was a fun character, and like Derek said, I've watched all the Spider-Man cartoons, and I've been watching them since they've been coming out. This one looks like it's going to be just like all the others, but just maybe a more younger geared audience, as opposed to a more adult geared audience. But will I watch it? Yes. And the one thing we forgot to mention was the Deadpool Wolverine coming out.
Oh yeah, it'll be hitting Disney Plus here very soon, and that will be a huge deal as well.
Oh yeah,
I'm definitely intrigued by Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. I'm curious to see how they incorporate that into the MCU. With Ironheart, I think I'm more intrigued by the fact that they're using the Hood as the villain in Ironheart, which has some magical ties and maybe some ties to something that we keep getting teased by Marvel all the time, and it starts with M, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it looks like it's going to be an interesting year ahead. I cannot wait for Daredevil. I am so excited. I'm really hoping that we will see some of those other Netflix properties find their way to Disney Plus. I would be all for more Luke Cage on my screen as well.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here, but it's an interesting look ahead. And it's also next year is going to be a big year for Marvel movies as well. And speaking of that, I didn't put this in the news, but it is popping up on the internet, though not confirmed, that Spider-Man's 4 title might be Brand New Day.
That's cool.
And which would be fitting in the aspect of how they ended Spider-Man 3. But there are a lot of people already panicked it's going to be tying into the classic Brand New Day storyline, which in that case, Spider-Man made a deal with Mephisto to make his identity secret again, and things went awry, and people say Spider-Man has never been the same since that. I think it's more going to be Brand New Day because it's a fresh start for Spider-Man in the MCU.
I did hear a rumor, whether or not it's true, that in Ironheart, Wiccan might show up too.
No, it would actually might make some sense, and especially if we're gonna have some Young Avengers tie-in, but we'll see about that.
Plus, if we were having the Hood as the bad guy, she might need some help with the magic.
Yeah. So, well, speaking of Wiccan, that leads us back into it is time to talk about Agatha All Along, as we have reached the climax with the final 2 episodes coming out October 30th, and we have seen them, and we are here to talk about them. But before we get into that, we just need to remind you of how we do things here at True Believers, because normal podcasts have their segments. No. We are an MCU podcast. Luckily, Kevin left Kat with a little piece of the Tesseract. I still haven't decided if that's a good thing or not, but we do phases here, and our first phase goes into plot description and initial reaction. So I'm going to bleed off a little bit of that Tesseract energy right now. And one last time, spoiler alert. To the spoilers, go watch the episodes, come back, join us. But let's get things started with talking episode 8 of Agatha All Along, which is "Follow Me, My Friend, to the Glory at the End," just like the lyrics in the song said. And we're going to start things off with a little plot description. Agatha agrees to give Billy to Rio, who views him as an abomination for gaining a second life. Billy and Jen rejoin Agatha at the end of the road, only to find it goes in a circle. Now, I found that very interesting. Billy puts his shoes back on, and the three are transported to a version of Agatha's basement with grow lights that slowly go out. Jen learns that Agatha was the witch who bound her and performs the unbinding spell. She regains her abilities and disappears, having got what she needed from the road. Agatha agrees to help Billy locate Tommy's soul, and Billy puts it in the body of a drowning boy. Billy disappears, and Agatha grows a flower through a crack in the floor using a seed from her locket, completing the trial. She escapes and finds herself in her backyard, where Rio awaits her with Billy. Agatha, resigned to her fate, kisses Rio and dies. Rio allows Billy to leave, and he returns home. Upon entering his room, he realizes that many of the objects in William's bedroom match aspects of the road, and hears Agatha laughing. End of episode. So, guys, we're just going to start with episode 8 here and talk about that. Give me some of your first reactions to this. Kat, you've been here filling in for Kevin. Give me some of your thoughts on this episode.
This episode was okay. I mean, it wasn't what we thought it was going to be or what was going to happen. It was great. I like how you stopped on the Wiccan picture. Great seeing him in full costume. Looked very comic accurate. The fight scene between Agatha and Death was kind of anticlimactic. I was hoping for a much more grandiose scene. I liked how they showed Wiccan being as powerful as he should be, but yet still not in full control. Giving Agatha back her powers, which I actually thought she was going to kill him, but then I'm like, that wouldn't have made sense. I'm like, No, maybe not. They reho Death. Love her. She looks amazing still. Agatha sacrificing herself was spot on in the comics. This episode was okay. The next one, we'll get there.
Derek, what about you? What were your thoughts on episode 8?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it kind of, had them complete the trial. As you kind of got to see a little bit of the combat there. I mean, to Kat's point, right? I mean, it was a little anticlimactic, but I also felt like Agatha knew it was futile, right? Like you can't really defeat death, right? Like you can only prolong it to some degree. So I think at that point, I think at the end, it really showed a bit of turn in Agatha because let's be honest, like we knew that to some point Billy represented, at this point we didn't know the name, but Agatha's kid, right? And her ultimate understanding of the character to some degree, where you thought, okay, she's bad. She's a bad guy. She's done a lot of evil things. It's not saying we should forgive her, but there is still that quote unquote mom side. It understands of why she's kept Billy at this point this whole time to some degree, right? And then, understanding that. And then I'll be honest, I mean, obviously we'll get into a bit more at the next episode, but when he walked into his room and I really took a minute to study everything, I already kind of cracked the code of what was going on prior to them even talking about and revealing it, just because then I seen everything in his room with a clear picture now that we've had the whole, road go through and everything. So I was like, okay, I understand what they're doing here, especially the way they ended it. I mean, granted, we didn't have to wait another week, right? We got to jump right into episode 9. But I overall thought it was fine, right? I mean, it shows them finishing the road. It shows them, basically having to deal with death. And Agatha, Agatha is going to play some trick on death, right? She's just not going to give Billy over to Rio. So from there, though, like I said, I thought it was fine. I did enjoy the little, when they were starting to battle the Westview people, like, oh my God, it's happening again, as they're just
a little PTSD there.
And I was just laughing at that.
Did you notice? I didn't notice this last time they showed us Billy's room, but this time they showed us the Rocky Horror Picture Show lips. Was that last time too?
Yep.
Did I miss that?
It was. You just said you wasn't a focus compared to like it was now. But for me, I this episode went about how I expected it to. We were going to get Billy's trial, and we knew that, and some kind of revelation with Tommy in this episode, and we got that. I was not necessarily expecting the confrontation between Rio and Death in this episode, but this is where the season kind of took a left turn a little bit for me.
Rio
and we'll talk about that when we get. Rio, yeah, and with Agatha and Death, and Agatha actually committing suicide, but doing it to save Billy, and then we find out also later on about why that Agatha usually always has a trick up her sleeve, and she did again. But I did think this episode was solid. One knock I had a little bit on this episode, and again, this ties into episode 9, and we'll talk about this more. But if after kind of making a big deal about Jennifer in episode 7 and some of the things that were said to Jennifer, she was kind of just written out of this episode and forgotten about afterwards. And so I think it was a little anticlimactic there, but I think anticlimactic might be the sum of what we're going to talk about with episode 9. So let's get into the plot of episode 9 of Agatha All Along. In this case, we are calling it Maiden Mother Crone. And yeah, this is going to be a little bit different, folks. So episode 9 of Agatha All Along opens in 1750. Agatha gives birth to Nicholas, but is warned by Death she will eventually take him. Agatha spends the next 6 years raising her son while killing witches, which Nicholas grows to oppose. Together, they create a children's song that would eventually become the Ballad of the Witches' Road and take on life of its own. Eventually, Nicholas grows sick and Death takes him, devastating Agatha. With nothing holding her back, she continues murdering witches and stealing their powers by conning them with the promise of the road. Then we go back to the present, and in the present, the ghost of Agatha tells Billy that he made the previously non-existent road a reality with his magic. He blames himself for the deaths of Lila, Alice and Sharon, but Agatha retorts that she was already planning to kill them and that Jen is alive, having escaped the road with her magic restored because of him. Billy returns to Westview and tries to banish Agatha. She resists, afraid of having to face Nicholas in death. Billy relents and allows Agatha's spirit to guide him. After sealing the door to the road and recording the names of the fallen, Billy and Agatha set out to find Tommy. Now, Derek, I'm going to start with you on this episode and your initial reactions on this, because this took a left turn I don't think a lot of people were expecting with this episode of Agatha all along. And I'm curious of what your take was, because I know you really like this.
Well, I mean, I'd be curious because again, I don't know the Wiccan comics, right? I really, at that point wasn't following much in the comic industry. So it'll be interesting to see what your guys' take on and why you think it's so left turn. Because really this is kind of just completing the story of really the big reveal, right? As you mentioned, right, is that everything was in Billy's head essentially, or he made come true, right? Which is what we talked about, which I already kind of cracked the code when they had him enter in the room in episode 8. And this is really just kind of now giving you fully how the ballad of the Witch's Road was even intended. What was the Witch's Road? Because up to this point prior, we're assuming that it was actually a legit thing. Well, here it's actually was just a whole ruse the whole time for Agatha to be the one killing the witches and stealing their powers, right? And prolonging her life essentially as how she's been able to live for, 250 plus years at this point. So, and obviously we get a little bit of Nicholas's, and the whole point and where that is, I necessarily doesn't always have to explain it, but we just find out she's pregnant, right? Like, is it pregnant due to black magic or is it pregnant from actually, I don't know.
Wait, Derek, I'm just going to interrupt you here. You are on a Star Wars podcast, so it was midichlorians.
Well, we all know that Star Wars is all about redemption arcs, and that's how you get to become a Force ghost. So we know that's what this is going on. But also to really talk about, and you guys might be upset just because Agatha's a ghost now and she somehow escaped death, but that's really where I thought was fine, because think about what she did right before she did two things, before she fought death and then self-sacrificed herself to let Billy live. She absorbed Wiccan's power. So the fact that she absorbed his power freshly right before she died, to me makes sense that she's able to do what she's doing right now. Which I get, and I'm okay with you guys feeling that it was anticlimactic as a story, but you also have to remember where we're going with next is Vision Quest, and that's this 3-part series, and whether they're going to give us anything in between or if that's going to be part of the Vision Quest storyline is Billy and Agatha finding Tommy, and then obviously we're getting Vision hopefully restoring himself through the White Vision, and then potentially even getting Wanda back at this point, right? I don't know what that story is going to look like. They supposedly start filming some point next year with the premiere in 2026.
Yep.
So we're
gonna.
But anyways,
we're gonna get into that a little bit later too, Derek.
Sure. Sorry, but anyways, that's why I liked it.
Yeah. Kat, I know you're of a very differing opinion. In fact, I believe the text was something along the lines of, "What the bleep did I just watch?" that I got from you after this episode.
First thing, I'm disappointed that Derek has not watched the other 6 episodes or 7 episodes of this podcast to know what we've been talking about and what we think. Derek, I'm disappointed with you. I still love you, but I'm disappointed. This episode sucked. I'm going to say it straight out. Not at all what we expected. Great, it was a flashback. I'm happy they showed Nicholas. I'm glad they explained more about the Witch's Road and what it really was. This episode was absolutely boring. I was very disappointed with it. Agatha the ghost, yeah, that's in the comics. I knew that was going to happen. Agatha helping Billy, that's in the comics. We knew that was going to happen. Everything else about this episode, Agatha stealing power, killing witches. Anyone who knows anything about Agatha from the comics, or even watching this, would know that that's how she maintained her youth, how she stayed alive. This episode, for me, sucked. I was very disappointed. What the F did I just watch?
I think for me, I kind of look at this episode in two ways. I think it was a necessary episode for us to have a little bit better understanding of Agatha, because I think that is something that we fully didn't get throughout this episode. However, I think there would have been a better way to approach it. I think if there were aspects of this episode that were flashbacks that ran through Agatha, instead of this being like, okay, you're getting everything in the final episode in the flashback, I think it might have worked a little bit better, and I think it would have helped us flesh out Agatha as we were going along. There's some very interesting concepts here. The whole relationship with obviously with Agatha and Death. There's questions that still remain unanswered. And going into the modern time too, I loved everything they did with Billy. Him, closing the, figuring, for those of us who hadn't cracked the code yet, that Billy, who is nearly as powerful as his mother, did create the Witch's Road under Westview, and that when you go back now and you rewatch the show, there'll be things that you will pick up that will make you realize, like, oh, hey, here's the little hints that explain this, besides all the things that were in Billy Kaplan's room. The other thing I liked about it too was, I have no problem with Agatha being the ghost. One of her reasons is she's a ghost. There's a few reasons, but one of the reasons is not wanting to confront her son because of the guilt she feels over that. And the way this show ends, it sets up things in the future. My problem with this is, and we'll get into it a little bit later too when we get into a deeper things about the plot, but they wasted a lot of things. They wasted a lot of things that they established in this show that they could have gone in different directions on if they would have taken this flashback and incorporated it into other episodes. And I think that's kind of where I'm feeling my issues with this final episode where it did. By doing this, I don't think they tapped the full potential of everything they were setting up in the show. And so that's kind of where I am at with this. I'm fine with Agatha with the witches, killing the witches. That fits everything. Ghost Agatha, like I said, Billy trying to banish her, and then ending on the note of where her and Billy are going off to find Tommy. So a lot of interesting things there, and a lot of interesting moving parts, but I don't think they optimized everything they did. And we'll get into we'll get into that a little bit later in the show. But right now, guys, I'm going to burn off a little bit more Tesseract energy, because I did find some trivia for these episodes that was pretty interesting. So, doing some research on these last two episodes, there's some interesting ties that I came up with, and let's start off with this one. First, these are all from episode 8 right now. First, Rio mentions how Billy disrupts the sacred balance because he got another chance at life by jumping into William Kaplan's body. The sacred balance of things is also something Thanos consistently talked about wanting to get rid of half of all living things. So, if you're starting to look for a little Death Thanos connection there, you've got that. Mm-hmm. But up next we've got where she told us who she was in the very beginning. Of course, that is Death. And if you look back in episode 4, she's less a Green Witch and more the Green Witch. So they knew that she was the Green Witch, even though they maybe not mentally accepted it as of yet. And then another interesting thing was another tie-in to WandaVision in this aspect. I don't know how I did that. Billy not knowing how he created the Witch's Road. Wanda's very same reaction to how she created the Hex in Westview as well. So another wonderful tie-in there. And then one of the things that this show has done too is tie-ins to classic film, whether it's been Alice in Wonderland or The Wizard of Oz. In this case, it's The Wizard of Oz, because at the end of The Witch's Road, Agatha emerges from her house as Storm Cellar, which is just like another nod to The Wizard of Oz, how Dorothy never makes it to the cellar with Auntie Em and Uncle Henry. So I found that interesting. And then this also, Agatha finds a piece of the dandelion inside her pendant. In episode 9, we see Nikki and Agatha blowing dandelions too. Typically, dandelions symbolize hope, strength, and resilience. They are also often associated with healing journeys dealing with grief and loss. So, interesting there. And then, of course, Agatha was paying attention, because In order to try and escape Rio, Agatha creates a circle out of sand, which is similar to what Alice taught the Coven in episode 4 using her protection magic. And also, then Agatha remembers to get down after Rio calls her a coward because of Lilia's final words to her in episode 7. So again, the writers being brilliant and making sure they're catching a lot of the little things as well.
Yeah.
And then, of course, too, we start getting into some of the Easter eggs in episode 9, and there's some interesting ones here as well. When Rio visits Agatha while she's giving birth, you can see she's spinning a flower. Every time Agatha and Rio are together, Rio always brings her flowers. They like each other. It's so sweet.
Yeah, right.
Except she's a crazy ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, well, that too. But yeah, when your crazy ex-girlfriend is death, it's a little bit scary. But also, too, we have the line, "I said no incantation. You I made from scratch." Hence Nicholas Scratch's last name. Also, we see Nicholas steal that bell in episode 9, which, of course, Agatha has in episode 2, which she uses to help bring forth the door to the Witch's Road. And then also, we see here, we learn that the Ballad of the Witch's Road was a song Agatha and Nikki created, and that he later performed as part of a con to lure witches to Agatha. In episode 1, in the bedroom Agatha created for Nikki during her detective hallucination, you can see the award Nikki received was for singing.
That's cool.
So again, and they do a good job of the little tie-ins. And then, of course, when Rio comes for Nikki, she chooses not to use her true face, aka the skull that we previously saw in episode 8 when Agatha died. And then
That was a cool picture, though, when she looked at Billy.
And then Agatha appears as a ghost in Billy's bedroom after he figures out he created the Witch's Road. This is comic accurate description of Agatha. In the comics, not only is Agatha older, but she is a ghost at one point. Notably, in her ghost form, she helped the Scarlet Witch travel, you guessed it, the Witch's Road in the Scarlet Witch comic book series that ran from 2015 to 2017. So, some interesting Easter eggs here. And like I said multiple times here, one of the things the writers did phenomenally throughout the series was the little ties to not only WandaVision, but the tying back to previous episodes of Agatha as well. They really did keep, and that's great editing, and that's great just keeping an eye on what you're doing. And I think that was one of the reasons why this show did succeed, is because it kept kept the story going while still respecting where it came from. I'm just what you guys feel about Cat. I know we've talked about that a lot during this run.
No, that's part of the best thing about this show. Even the last episode, they continued doing that as much as we could hope for, barring the last episode being what it was. They've done an amazing job, and I hope other shows see this, and then they do the same thing. Even if not as much, they have to do it as much. They show a little snippet of something in episode 1, refer to it in episode 4 or 5, and then come back to it again maybe in episode 7 or 8. It's like, hey, great recollection of what's going on. Shows the fine art of detail and keeps the shows going, not just for us, but it's like, hey, we're trying, guys. We want to make sure that you see that we're doing it as well, and we're not just giving you a TV show or a movie. We're giving you story.
Yeah, Derek, what about you? Were you noticing throughout the run a lot of these keeping the continuity of everything that was set in WandaVision flowing through into Agatha, and Agatha sticking to what it established in its earlier episodes?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, episode 7 really showed you that, right? With all of Patti LuPone's, her dialogue and randomness throughout, then just all collected into one episode, right? As it then kind of streamlined it. It's like, okay, now it all makes sense, right? To some degree, right? It was still, but obviously there's a lot of things, to your point, that like people going back and really taking all these snippets and all this stuff and all the Easter eggs. Like, I'm not going to be able to catch some of that, especially like the little plaque of Nicholas Scratch, right? Like, I didn't look at that, but that's cool that people go back and do that. And to your point, I think when fans of the show go back and find those things, it does kind of say, okay, they were clever enough to drop little hints along the way that when you go back and watch it, you could be like, oh, here's all the things that make sense, right? And that's what they do a lot of times in those types of thriller or mystery type deal shows or movies, right? Where they're tying it all back. And I can understand where you guys were thinking, especially where Kat's saying like episode 9 is pretty boring because it's, 2/3 or 3/4 of it's a flashback, right? And it's just kind of like, okay. And then we get a little bit of new at the end. And then it left you at a, cliffhanger still, right? Or, for what we're talking about. So I can understand where episode 9 to that point. But to what you were mentioning, Kyle, about them, they could have trickled it out or done it. Like you can look at it two different ways because I also think about like, I hate when they do that trickling of a flashback at certain points. And if they do a good job writing it, it can be effective. But if not, it can be like Book of Boba Fett. And it's just terrible, right? So,
whoa.
So they have these flashbacks at certain points, and then it doesn't really tie to the episode.
Flashbacks in Book of Boba Fett.
Well, I like them too, but to me, we always talked about it like in the series where it's like put it all up front, like give me the whole flashback in the first 2.5 episodes, rather than just giving it at the beginning of each episode. But then it didn't really tie into like him like tying back to that later portion of the episode, right? Like, oh, this is something I learned from that flashback, right? Like they could have possibly done that, right? But I also think it was almost kind of like episode 8 would have been, and then the little bit of episode 9 could have just been the way it ended and been fine. Episode 9 almost felt like to the point of where it was just kind of that portion you get to then, really, tie it all back to say, okay, this is really where Agatha came along. Had they put that up front, it could have made sense, right? Obviously not have the big reveal where the witch's road, then, she's using it as a ploy. Like they could have cut that portion out and then brought it back towards the end. I would have been fine either way, but I can understand where you guys are saying like episode 9 kind of just felt like an entire flashback, but that really wasted. So I'm totally fine with that. But to me, I'm like, I would have rather had it the way it did, just because, like I said, I've seen how they can do it where they could chop it up and really mess it up. So yeah. I'd rather have the 8.5 episodes be really good and then kind of have that at the end.
Yeah. Like you said, Derek, a lot of points there, and kind of I can see it causing the piece of Tesseract over there at a Captain Glow. So I'm going to release a little bit more energy because we're going to get our third phase here, and we'll get talking about some deeper plot points. Okay, guys, phase 3. This is where we get into a little bit more deeper plot points analysis, and some ties to the MCU in the comics, but with a little help from our friends over at Screen Rant, we're going to get into more of the deeper plot points these last 2 episodes of Agatha All Along. From Screen Rant themselves, Agatha All Along episodes 8 and 9 provided an epic, heartfelt climax to the MCU show, answering many questions while raising others for the future of the franchise. After Agatha All Along episode 7's ending, only 3 of the original coven that set off to walk the Witch's Road remained: Agatha, Jen, and Billy. Not only that, but the MCU's Lady Death was confirmed as Ray Vidal, adding a notable wild card to the events of Agatha All Along 2 episodes now. Agatha All Along's cast all of the above them.
Kyle, you're breaking up, bud. You're breaking up.
By the time Agatha All Along episode 9's ending, many mysteries were answered, from the true nature of the MCU's witches road to what fate befalls Billy, Agatha, Jen, and Rio. Each of these elements was addressed, all while Agatha All Along episode 9 laid intriguing groundwork for a continuation of the storyline in the future of the MCU. So, yeah, I think they had some interesting points, and guys, as I'm trying to process it all through my head. There was so much going on in these last 2 episodes that I want to hit several points. And I'm just a lot of things going on in my head when I think about this. But the first thing I want to hit is the Witch's Road itself. Was it even real? Because obviously in Agatha, in episode 6, when Agatha states to Billy that she knew he was the son of the Scarlet Witch due to both magic and users possessing the same tell. In Agatha All Along episode 9, the Stowaway Comet returned to explain perhaps the biggest reveal of the entire show. Billy created the Witch's Road, just as Wanda used her power to make the hex, and in Royal Westville, in her idyllic world, Billy used his abilities to create the Witch's Road using elements scattered throughout his childhood bedroom. I mean, given that Wanda possessed chaos magic, which allowed her to reshape reality at will, it stands to reason that her son also possesses these abilities. This explains how Billy was able to create the Witch's Road. Everything Billy needed to find Tommy was already inside of him, yet he needed a physical manifestation to see it through. Thus, the Witch's Road was born from his chaos magic powers, formulating a physical series of trials and tribulations for him and the rest of Agatha all along's witches to overcome. This actually raises the question of what exactly the Witch's Road is. Many will wonder whether it is an alternate dimension that Billy created or whether it was simply happened inside the minds of the Coven. That said, Agatha all along episode 9 notes that the show's events happened, meaning the Witch's Road was basically around a physical location just as Wanda's Hex was with Westview. As such, the most likely explanation for the Witch's Road is that was a large chunk of ground beneath Westview that was subconsciously molded to resemble what Billy desired to find Tommy. This reality is supported by two different scenes in Agatha all along. For one, Lilia and Jen see the abandoned subway station of Westview when beneath the road in episode 7. Secondly, after regaining her powers, Jen is shown physically clawing herself out of the ground just outside of Westview. Therefore, it can be assumed that Billy excavated the Witch's Road beneath Westview subconsciously, meaning it was a physical location enabled by his chaos magic. So a lot of stuff to process there, guys, but the pieces add up between what he had in his room and how those became the trials and the areas, and then using the physical location of Westview, which really started to show itself from about episode 7 forward. The Wiccan is just as powerful as his mother, I would say, Kat.
He's supposed to be more powerful than his mother in the comics, but again, how comic accurate are we getting? I fully believe that he manifested the entire Witch's Road under Westview, using, like you said, the items in his room from what he remembers to be trials, and and no doubt that's what that was. I mean, like you said, the last girl, I keep like the terrible names, claws out of the ground and then flies away. It's like, well, I mean, where was it? If it wasn't under Westview, alternate dimension wouldn't make sense. It has to be a manifestation of chaos magic under the city, thus easy access to it, and why they saw certain things that. So, why is that there? It's like, oh, because maybe he didn't manifest that as part of the background and just sort of let it just happen.
Yeah, Derek, you said you had figured out the code. When did you feel like you had unlocked the code?
As soon as, like I said, episode 8 towards the end, after Billy returns back, then it made sense because, right, you're seeing, before they kind of had him start like seeing the things and kind of pointing it to the audience, I already was seeing like the background model of the Wizard of Oz. The posters that Kat was talking about, like the posters were already on the wall, right? When you knew that he had the album in there of what was her mom's name, Lorna.
Yeah.
So so she, you already knew he had these possessions, right? And you could tell, right, because here we are back at Westview again, right? To the point of because they never also explained how does Agatha even end up in Westview to begin with. They haven't really talked about that. Why did she decide to settle? Well, because there's probably, to Kat's point, there's probably some type of actual chaos force underneath in Westview to begin with. And what would be under there would be all these tunnels, these rituals, whatever it is that somebody was looking for. So those tunnels had to be already there. But what were they looking for, right? What are these people there? So Westview is going to have, in the magical sense realm, is going to play a bigger part, which I think we'll get in Vision Quest, of why everybody, like, why was Wanda initially drawn there, right? Obviously she had this plot of land, but it's all going to make sense at some point, right? So the fact that it helped her release her powers and to do the things she's doing. To you guys, to your point, how powerful is Wiccan? We don't know yet. It usually makes sense that typically kids, especially when you have two superhero parents, usually the kids end up being stronger than both parents, right? So it would make sense that Wiccan does, but the fact that Wanda, it's all an hallucination, though it is reality in some sense, right? So yeah. I feel like that's what the Witch's Road was, because Billy wanted to believe it so hard, right? Because he didn't know, like all the other witches, that it really, as it's been passed on these generations, was really just a ploy. And again, that's what I thought episode 9 was fine, was really revealing the two things about Agatha, right? The whole point of the Witch's Road was just to be a ploy, but then Billy, because of what he believed in and wanted to find his brother so badly, he made it up to make it reality. So,
Well, the next topic I want to get to is death and ghosts, because another of the biggest reveals in episode Agatha along episode 8's ending was that Agatha died. After initially promising to turn Billy over to Rio, who thought that his reincarnation went against the natural order of death, Agatha instead chose to sacrifice herself. At first, Agatha was willing to let Billy go with Rio until the former reminded her of Marvel's Nicholas Scratch, her son. Agatha then turned and walked towards Rio, kissing her, basically enacting the old adage of the kiss of death. Rio took the one she desired in the end, leaving Billy alive. That still doesn't answer how Agatha returns as a ghost. However, this death did not mean the Agatha in the end of Agatha in the MCU. Agatha all along episode 9 revealed that Agatha returned as a ghost, just as she did one point in the Marvel comics. The show does not explain exactly how this happens, yet the source material often states that ghosts are formed by beings who still have work to do on Earth. And Agatha all along case that Agatha wanted to retrieve a locket containing the hair of Nicholas Scratch, leading her to Billy as a ghost. Now, guys, we talked about this. I think the death of Agatha was an incredibly powerful moment in episode 8, and then having her come back as a witch at episode 9. Yes, she's tied to this locket. That's kind of like the physical thing that's keeping her on the plane of existence. And it's obvious, I think, at least in some contents, maybe her remaining mission is to help Billy find Tommy. But I don't think we get really a true full explanation of how Agatha returns as a ghost, but yet she knows about it because she knows she got one over on death in this episode. She basically insinuates that when she's giving an explanation to Billy. What were you guys feeling about that, Kat? I know you're a little bit more friendlier with the comic tie-ins and things like that. What did you feel about how that scenario played out?
I think both are correct. That she had a tie-in with the locket and she wanted that back, so she wanted it. She wanted to help Billy, but I think it was also mainly she came back as a ghost, not because of the locket, not because of Billy, because both of them, but mainly to give Death the middle finger. Because she said in this episode, or maybe the last episode, that she never wanted to see you again. She wants to live a very long, long time, and when she does die, to never see you again. Thus, being a ghost, she won't see Death because she won't go to Death's realm because she has things to do, which I think was her way of giving Death the middle finger. Like, I'm not going to see you again. You know, F you, lady. I'm going to help this kid find what he's looking for and maybe hang out here for a little while longer.
Well, and I think this in episode 9, we understand now what the rift is between Agatha and Death is the fact of Nicholas dying.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I do think, and Derek, I'm kind of curious of what you think on this too, because my impression is that Death was there to take Nicholas when he was born, but because of her feelings for Agatha, gave her time with Nicholas, which maybe in the end only made things worse. But what did you think of that and how it played out?
So the idea of Death, to your point, right? Like it made sense, right? Like she basically gave Agatha borrowed time, right? Because to Death at that point, right, that could have just been a millisecond in Death's timeline, right? From where they were to when she had to take Nicholas, right? But at some point, you know, it's when she's called to do it. So I also think it's what helps build the relationship of why Agatha doesn't like Death, but Death is still obsessed about Agatha because to Death, that's just her job, right? Or you know, that's part of what she has to do. But Agatha feels like Death could do more, right? You know, it could be could have prevented the death, right? So that's where I felt like it helped establish why there's such a tight relationship with it. Other than we obviously know Death has, like I said, crazy ex-girlfriend vibes, even with the Thanos thing, right? I mean, that's really why the original Infinity War happens, right? But otherwise, to the point of why Agatha comes back as a ghost, to me, it's one of three things. One, it is truly that Agatha does not want to go face Nicholas, right? Which she states. And that's why she can't essentially die because she's not ready to face him. Two, she needs to help Billy. Right. And like I said, I think the fact that she absorbed Wiccan's power, helps her transcend that, right? Like the ability to do that. So it's tied to Billy. The other thing though is this is thinking that it's it, but is it Billy just manifesting Agatha as a ghost again? Is it him? Is this an illusion? Is this him now having the power to go beyond Westview and have those types of illusions, right? Like it's not just tied to one spot like what Wanda did or what Billy did with the road. He's going to have Agatha be a made up manifestation where, oh, we think it's Agatha doing their own things, but it's really just all in Billy's head, but he's able to conjure that up as a real thing, which is a ghost. So it's one of those three things, I think. And hopefully we'll get to explore that.
Yeah, I agree. That brings us to our next point, the quest for Tommy. Billy sees a boy being pranked by a group of teenagers. The teenagers drown the boy, who Billy states grew up in a place without love, with no one to care for him. As Billy asks if he is actively killing this boy so Tommy can be reborn, he disappears from the Witch's Road, meaning Billy got his wish and Tommy was reborn as this boy after he drowned in the pool. Where this boy now, as Tommy turns up again in the MCU remains to be seen, but what subsequently happens to Billy and Agatha hints at this. So Tommy Maximoff, he's been reborn within the MCU, so now the quest is out there to cast Tommy Maximoff, and where do we see him next? The show basically ends, but it sounds like that's what the next chapter is for Agatha and Billy, is the quest for Tommy. I mean, we are getting all the Young Avengers components here, Kat.
Yep. I'm still thinking it's going to be him showing up in Ironheart to try to free some boy from prison or jail, or maybe he has maybe his speed is magic speed instead of Speed Force speed or whatever the Marvel Universe uses, and that's why the Hood's there. Maybe he wants that speed, and he helps helps Ironheart fight him and then realizes who he is. I mean, who knows what we're going to do. I'd love to see that happen. That'd be really cool. And that's continuing the Young Avengers arc until they make the episode.
What about you, Derek? I mean, we've seen several Young Avengers characters already been brought in via basically outside of Miss Marvel, and even technically even Miss Marvel through Disney Plus. They are really building the Young Avengers through Disney Plus, and Wiccan and Tommy Maximoff, aka Speed in the comics, are a big part of that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, to me, it's basically doing what Netflix did with the Defenders, right? We get all these individual series stories, and then we'll get a series for West Coast Avengers or Young Avengers or whatever they're going to make. So I'm excited for anyway. I mean, I've enjoyed Kamala, right, as Miss Marvel. I like that series. Like I said, enjoyed what they did with this one and establishing Wiccan. Like you said, we get Tommy, Speed. We'll see what they have there. We'll see what we get tied with Ironheart, right, as they start to establish that. I'd imagine they would still give us, Hallie from Hawkeye. What we'll get there. So we'll see. And then, do we get a 6? I don't know. Or is that going to be, Brie Larson, reprising Captain Marvel as kind of their, mentor stuff like that. Well, we'll see. Right. So, I mean, I enjoyed the Marvels. I thought it was great.
I don't like Brie Larson as Captain Marvel.
So, but I like I said, I'm excited because, again, to me, there's been a lot more hits again with the MCU series than there has been misses. So I'm okay with the way they're going. Again, they don't have to put out 6 series a year, right? Just give us 1 or 2 a year, and kind of give us some good writing. And what they're going to do with this one, like I said, I'm with Kat. They got lots of opportunities. I mean, they could introduce him in any of the movies coming up or any of the series. It could be again cliffhanger, or maybe again it's nothing until Vision Quest. When they finally tie this up, because you got to think. I mean, 2026, as crazy it sounds, isn't that far away at this point, since it's almost 2025.
Yeah. Well, that's going to lead us into the final plot point of this phase that I have, and this is, where do we go from here, and did Marvel stick the landing? After Billy closes the Witch's Road and Agatha retrieves her locket as a ghost, the two are unsure of what happens next. Billy states that he could use some help learning about his powers before Agatha states she tends to kill those in her coven. Billy cheerfully admits that he is the same after his Witches Road creation led to the deaths of Sharon, Alice, and Lilia. Billy then creates an exit from the basement, prompting Agatha to say, "Let's go find Timothy." Agatha all along has no post-credit scene, but that promise largely renders the need for one redundant. This hints that Billy and Agatha will return in the MCU's future, as will Tommy Maximoff in his new body. No confirmed upcoming MCU movies or TV shows could realistically include this storyline, but some theorized projects could. One is the rumored Young Avengers project, given that Tommy and Billy are prominent members of this team in Marvel Comics. It could be the case that Young Avengers starts with Billy and Agatha rescuing Tommy, though when this project will be filmed and released is anyone's guess. So you guys have kind of been throwing out some theories. I think Vision Quest could be a place. There's so little we know about it right now that there's a lot of different directions we could lead to. My personal opinion is that they are really building up to a reunification of the Maximoff family and the first true appearance of the Young Avengers together in probably Avengers Doomsday. That is what I think, because that would be an absolutely huge moment and and I think that would fit bringing in the Young Avengers at that time, because next we're leading into Secret Wars and having some of those characters be very prevalent in those two films.
Hulkling.
That's just kind of where I'm going with it right now, but there's a lot of things we don't know about the MCU, and there's a lot of different directions that and a lot of different audibles they're calling right now. I mean, obviously, bringing Robert Downey Jr. and the return of the Russos, I think there's a lot of things still a little up in the air. I think when I look at all the projects that are coming out as far as the Disney Plus things, there's some tie-ins, but they could all be easily their own standalone stories too. So that's going to be very intriguing. Outside of Vision Quest, let's take Vision Quest out of the cycle here just for a minute, because we don't really know a lot about it. Is it going to be more about finding Tommy Maximoff at this point, or is it going to be more about bringing the Scarlet Witch back, or do those two things go hand in hand, do you think, at this point, that Tommy returns in part because of the return of the Scarlet Witch?
I think it's more about finding Tommy, and then Scarlet Witch, when she finds out her kids are alive, then she returns.
Derek, what about you?
What I would like to happen is let's establish Tommy, right? So he's the first priority, and leave the Young Avengers to Disney Plus. And with Avengers Doomsday, to me, that is utilize the Fantastic Four with a few of the current Avengers, like obviously Captain American Falcon, and New Falcon, right, or whatever they're going to do with that.
Captain America Falcon.
Yeah, I mean, basically, he's. I say that as parentheses Falcon, right? So people know.
Well, no, there's a Falcon. There's a new Falcon too.
Okay, yeah, we'll get more into that once.
Correct. I mean, we're supposed
Brave New World comes out.
But all I'm saying is that you make sure you understand that it's Captain America Sam. Then how about that instead of Captain America Steve? Obviously, we'd still hopefully get Bucky back, right, too, and all that. But to me, I think that's what I'd like to see with Avengers Doomsday, is a small Avengers team again. I don't need 500 Avengers, because that's what made Endgame so special to me, was culminating all the powers to defeat the baddie. Doomsday hopefully is not just a one-off of Doom, right? It's not just, he's going to make it and he's going to be the big bad villain and then he's dead, right? Like, it's just going to start the plot to a long-term story that will get over the next 8 to 10 years with Doom versus Fantastic Four, whatever they're going to do. I don't know yet, right? We'll see. But that's what I'd like them to do. So that way we can keep the Maximoffs in their own story. I think it's done really well. Obviously, I want to see Wanda back, but I'm okay if it just sticks to Disney Plus. I don't need to see Wanda. I think that's the thing, is they bring Wanda back, she's going to learn her lesson. Like, she's going to be essentially done fighting. Like, she's not going to want to do that anymore, because she's got what she wanted all along, was her family. And I'm hoping that'll be the payoff for Wanda to like, we'll see some of her, kick butt and do some things too. But at this point, I'd really like to see the Maximoff family, and really then focus on the Young Avengers, and then leave them out of the overall Avengers movie timeline.
I think the Young Avengers appearing in an Avengers film would be huge, Kat. Obviously, we are forgetting there is another character to the Young Avengers that also has not been introduced, and who is a very vital part of the Young Avengers, and that is Hulkling. So, and obviously Hulkling has that relationship with Wiccan.
Yep. I see Hulkling showing up in the Secret Wars, to be honest, as a Skrull, because that's what he is, that, something happens and he's trying to transform into a Hulk or a She-Hulk or something, and gets stuck, which is sort of Hulkling's background. And then, Wiccan finds him, helps him, and then, they fall in love and go from there. So I can see them being in Secret Wars as well, just for that matter. But like I said, we'll see. We've got lots of things that are happening.
There are a lot of elements to play in the coming just within the next 2 years of MCU, even just the next year in 2025, as we see Fantastic Four arrive and several other projects as well. Daredevil. But I think FF is huge. And I want to deviate for just a second because I do want to ask you, Derek, while we have you here for FF, because Kat and I were having this conversation off mic a couple of days ago. Do you feel that because the impression I'm getting with Fantastic Four is that Fantastic Four is taking place on another Earth within the multiverse, and it's somehow going to end up with some deals with Galactus or whatever, that the Fantastic Four will end up in the MCU movie universe coming from their own film. Is that kind of how you're feeling on this film, Derek?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying that they're going to have to end up at the end of the movie like that, but there's going to be some type of element to introduce that the multiverses obviously exist, right? So there's got to be something that they could access that, because that either, like I said, they either show up in the current MCU universe timeline at the end of that movie, or they get sucked in at the beginning of Doomsday, right? Like Doom is doing something that then causes them to then end up in our timeline, and then that's where they have to battle, and then, like I said, team up with some Avengers to make that the unified team to then battle at the end of that movie. So I see it one of two ways, but that's definitely it, right? They are taking place, which I love, the old classic 1960s sci-fi genre type deal. Hopefully it's not all CGI. It looks really, right now there's a lot of practical effects, which is super exciting because I think that makes it look better. But that also brings the cheesiness too, right? With that 60s filming. So I'm excited for it. Again, I'm off a little bit of the cast. I'm still, a couple of them, I'm still kind of like, we'll see, right? Specifically, Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards. I'm still not sold on that. But, I will say this, for the most part, other than maybe a couple of people, yes, I will agree with you, Kat, that Brie Larson isn't the best Captain Marvel.
She's terrible.
But other than that, for the most part, I feel like they've pretty much hit most home runs with the people they cast. So we'll see, right? So, and again, just because it is here doesn't mean that they don't. I mean, it'd be really weird for them to establish this cast and then introduce more Fantastic Four people, but they've already done that once with when we had Doctor Strange too. So
supposedly they're introducing Herbie too.
Well, they've had Herbie in the comics as well, so that'll be
There was the picture. Supposedly the picture of him in one of the scenes they show, and there's like it says Herbie on the. So I'm like, sweet.
There we go. Well, guys, with that, we're gonna get ready to close out this episode of True Believers. Okay, guys, it is phase 4. It's time for some of our give your final thoughts on not only Agatha as these last 2 episodes, but Agatha as a whole. And just some closeout thoughts here. Derek, I'm going to start with you. Thank you for joining us today. I know the Drunken Gungan is getting ready for a busy time with Skeleton Crew just around the corner, but I appreciate your time on this. But I'm curious your thoughts of Agatha all along as a series, and where maybe it stacks up for you within in what we've gotten from Disney Plus so far.
It's hard to say because it almost feels like a season 2, right, of WandaVision, right? Which is, again, what their kind of intent is with this. So, but Agatha all along as a series, like I'm with you guys. Like some episodes were better than others, and some, are kind of, could go either way, but still enjoyable as a whole, especially as you go back to, you guys mentioned, right, referencing earlier episodes or things that they're doing. I would say as a whole, I'd probably give it between an 8 and a 9, 8.5, 9-ish, probably somewhere in there out of 10. I really enjoyed the series. I think it's solid writing. I like what they did with it. I would like them to establish, and that'd be great if they did something here. Maybe even that's how they get Tommy, to do more of those one-off movies like they did with Werewolf by Night.
Yeah,
that would be really cool if they did something here.
Really like how they introduced Tommy in like a one-shot special.
Yes, something. And the cool thing about Werewolf by Night that they did, right, was they paid homage to the old classic horror movies right before they did a Wizard of Oz, hint, hint, turnaround at the end. Why wouldn't you want to do something that for the first 2 seasons basically has been doing that, right? Taking other eras and other movies and incorporating it very well writtenly. To me, give me a one-off to at least tie us over, or give us something, or maybe after Vision Quest, maybe that's what we get. We get one of these one-off movies with the Maximoff family. That's how they bring back Wanda, right? Something like that, which I think would be really cool.
Kat, what about you?
It's still in the top 5. I still love it, even with the last episode being a pile of pudong. That's few Star Wars reference people out there. But yeah, no, I mean, would I watch it again? Absolutely. Will I watch all the episodes again? So yeah, it's really good. I give it a solid 9, and yeah.
So for me, I've thoroughly enjoyed this series, even with the way the ending went, which was not my kind of thing. I think they left us a lot of stuff on the table. I think they created some things that they showed up as some what we thought were going to be crucial things in this series, and they took them out very
lame.
Nondescript lame. I'm looking at you, Salem 7.
Hold on, we got to talk something with that. Why they build up this group of 7 women? They show them mysteriously powerful, evil, just like we're gonna fight you to the death in the end, and then they just kill them off in one episode, rather weakly, in my opinion.
Unceremoniously.
Yeah, and then it's like you build up these women so and then we kill them. We're done.
But that's what I loved about Patty's character so much. She made the ultimate sacrifice to kind of.
No, I agree, and I love her character. We talked about. Go back and watch episode 7. Looking at you, Derek. Go back and watch episode 7. We both agree. We loved her character. Her arc was great. We're glad we tied her in. How they did it. But to just end it with the 7 that way is just so unceremoniously weak, in my opinion. They could have brought them back for the fight. And against Agatha, they could have been intermixing between Death and Agatha, trying to fight them as well, and Tommy helping out. It could have been such a more climactic fight scene with him, but
I could get that a little bit more action. You wanted a little bit more action. That's all.
But just to kill him the way they killed him, I'm really disappointed.
Yeah.
I hope they do come back at the new 7 in Vision Quest or something. Please, God, bring them back.
I would think that would actually not be a bad idea to have them in Vision Quest.
Yes, please. Something.
Them there, but overall, like I said, I think this is still one of the best things Marvel's put out on Disney Plus. Catherine Hahn is a force of nature,
Yummy.
And she was amazing in this. I would have actually liked to have seen a little bit more of Aubrey Plaza in this series, and than what we got. Just a tad bit more here and there. Yeah. But
I think we will, though. I think we will. I think we'll get
I think she's going to be. She's not done in the MCU by a long
shot. Not by a long shot.
And neither is Agatha, and obviously neither is Wiccan. But we will get there. But it has definitely been a very fun experience. And like I said, if nothing else, for Catherine Hahn to have this opportunity, she's a phenomenal actress, and she just even more so now.
Emmy nom.
What was that? I'm sorry, Derek.
An Emmy nod. Hopefully.
Oh yeah, she definitely deserves an Emmy nod
for leading, absolutely. And hopefully Patty gets a supporting nod as well.
There should be a couple Emmys for this show, but guys, Death is giving me the look. It's not Agatha, it's Death, because we are wrapping up our coverage of Agatha all along here on True Believers. So I can't say no to that face, guys. I'm sorry. Even though I know what it looks like.
Don't kiss her though. Don't kiss her.
Yeah.
Oh, I will. Oh, I will be. I'd be the first one in line.
There would be. I can think of worse ways to go. Let's put it that way. But thank you both to Kat and Derek for being on this episode, covering everything and wrapping up our coverage of Agatha all along here on the True Believers podcast. Kat, where can people find you on social media?
Oh, I'm at StaticCat1 everywhere that's social media. Facebook, X, Twitter, you name it, I'm probably there.
And Derek, what are you and the crew of What a Piece of Junk about to get yourselves into?
So, yeah, as you mentioned, right, you could find me over on the Facebook group for What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast, under the FPN banner. Yeah, we'll be starting here talking Skeleton Crew as we're priming up. We've had a little bit of hiatus after, it's kind of been slow a little bit after some of the series.
Scott did have a hurricane come through.
Well,
I've had
we all
two.
do.
We only had one. So
we've been tied up, and it's just with the end of summer and everything else going into now that we've kind of gotten fall through, and now we're getting into winter. But yeah, I mean, obviously, Skeleton Crew is coming up December 3rd, so we'll be talking about that on a weekly basis here pretty soon. So.
yeah, very exciting time. I'm looking forward to Skeleton Crew. I got to admit, Derek, I wasn't really feeling it until that trailer that hit yesterday. And there was something about that trailer. Maybe it's the music they put in and just what they actually. I felt like we got more of the actual show in that trailer. So I'm really looking. I'm much more intrigued about Skeleton Crew than I was based off of the first trailer we got. So
Same.
I'm looking forward to that. But you know what? We've got all kinds of stuff going on at the Fandom Podcast Network. And as far as True Believers go, I think probably the next thing around the corner, we'll be taking a look at What If, and maybe be a one-show thing covering the entire season, but we will be talking about it. And then I know not long from now, we'll be definitely talking about Daredevil Born Again. I think Kat has already threatened me with Punisher-type violence if I don't include him on that podcast. So, yeah. So I can't orphan my kitty. So, but guys, thank you again so much. If you're looking for me, you can find me, of course, all over on the Fandom Podcast Network, hosting shows, guest hosting on shows, editing, all that stuff. You can find me on the Fandom Podcast Network Facebook page. You can find me individually on Facebook. You can find me on the True Believers page. You can find me on Twitter at AKyleW. You can also find me on Discord at AKyleW. And you can find me on Instagram and Threads at AKyleFandom. Kevin, you can find at Spartan_Phoenix on pretty much all the social medias. We know he's still having fun in the land down under Australia. Hopefully he's staying away from the Vegemite. It's all good. And hopefully he finishes his trip on that Down Under Witches Road, the upside down version.
So it's a little longer.
Yeah, I'm going to get in so much trouble with Netflix. It's not even going to be funny. But you know what, guys? It's all good. But until next time, it's been a blast talking Agatha all along. Thank you to everybody who's contributed over this time frame. And as we close things out, there's only one way we do it around here at True Believers, and that is to tell you Excelsior and make ours Marvel.